Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast with Eric Wolf and Ashi Vale, where we help you become a better industry professional by gaining inspiration from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. With each episode, we meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. And now for today's episode. I'm Eric Wolf, and I'll be your host today for episode 15 of Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast. And joining me today is co-host Ashi Vale. Today we'll be speaking with Javier Albarracin. Javier has 20 years of experience in the Middle East and North Africa, designing and organizing many conferences, seminars, working groups, trade missions, and training sessions. Anticipating the present and future growth and relevance of multiculturalism, he taught courses on how to manage multiculturalism in Arab and Muslim environments. Then, a few years ago, he decided to enter the world of halal food. He is interested in the institutional application of halal in food service to help foster greater respect for diversity and meet the growth needs as cities become more cosmopolitan. To this end, he created Barcelona Halal Services with the aim of encouraging Barcelona to capitalize on this great potential. One of his first programs was to organize the International Halal Congress at the Alimentaria exhibition for the past two congresses. Welcome, Javier.
Hello, good afternoon.
Javier, tell us a little bit about Barcelona Halal Services. What do you do?
The idea of Barcelona Halal Services is trying to encourage multiculturalism, respect for the difference through gastronomy in Barcelona. So that's why, for me, Barcelona is a very relevant place in which people feel really comfortable from different cultures, is between Europe and the Arab world and beyond. So in that sense, I think that Barcelona should play a role in trying to promote cooperation, in trying to generate integration and promote multiculturalism. And Barcelona Halal Services wants to provide all the eventual tools and fulfill the needs that might be necessary to encourage the Muslim world to feel comfortable in Barcelona.
And you said that Barcelona was in a unique position because it is a Mediterranean city, and it faces Northern Africa.
Barcelona is a sort of hybrid reality. It is a European political reality. It's based in the political institutions of Europe. At the same time, it has a huge background of Mediterraneanness. So in that sense, it's quite unique, located either in a social sense, in a cultural sense, but also in a political sense to play that role of bridge. So it's quite unique located and definitely has assets towards the north and the south. And I want to contribute for those assets.
Javier, I can see how Barcelona would be a great place to start your company. May I ask what inspired you to start it?
I've been for the last 20 years, as it was mentioned before, promoting cooperation on a cultural, economical, business level between Europe and the Mediterranean countries. So what I've seen during all these 20 years is there is plenty of potential, plenty of interest, social interest, economic interest that could go hand in hand to do what is called co-development in the region. And Barcelona is very well located. So I am from Barcelona. I am a deep believer of Barcelona as an asset for this multicultural cooperation. And I am very Mediterranean in that sense. So I think that I can put together several pieces of this puzzle to make Barcelona a meeting place where people feel comfortable here.
And would you be able to define what halal means for us and also tell us, what exactly your company does? What kinds of services do you offer?
Halal is what it is permitted for the Muslim population. Halal is also exactly what should be done. But the part of halal that is interesting to me is the part that is really respectful with diversity. That in the same table, going for gastronomy, you can have people eating kosher, eating halal, people eating, pig in that sense, and everybody feels comfortable in the same table. I'm not interested in the halal side where you can use it for self-ghetto, where you can use the excuse or the fact of halal gastronomy or lifestyle to close yourself and then separate from the rest of diversity. I'm interested in the respectful diversity. And where we are located, as I was mentioning in the case of Barcelona, the Muslim reality is not only powerful, but it's going to be much more powerful in terms of tourism, in terms of immigration, in terms of investment. So for the sake of that diversity, I think that promoting awareness, knowledge of what halal means in Barcelona will help everybody, the incomers from the Muslim world and the locals, and as I said, the Europeans here in Barcelona, to generate that comfortable place where everybody feels like they can sit together and create and develop and innovate together. So Barcelona Halal Services, in that sense, tries to provide and develop with institutions, with enterprises, with individuals and groups, tries to develop the halal concept. We might be doing from catering to training in schools or universities, and from organizing, as it was mentioning before, congresses, to promoting a sort of business cluster to try to get the opportunities of that business.
And Javier, just so that we can further enlighten our audience, what does it mean for a product or food to be halal? Is it a particular way that meat is cut? Are there other rules that need to be followed? Would you be able to give us some examples for what that means?
Halal is a broad concept that basically is known for the food and beverage sector, but it goes beyond and is spreading into more sectors. It also goes for cosmetic, it also goes for pharmaceutical, it also goes for tourism, for, of course, finance. Everybody is aware of Islamic finance, but it's also going to other sectors, and in fact is growing. But in food and beverage, basically is what is not permitted, and that is, for instance, pork, pig is not permitted, but saying pork is a very, very powerful animal in terms of the use it has in Western, at least in European gastronomy. There are plenty of products, byproducts, subproducts that are having pig enzymes, pig fat, or whatsoever. And it goes from candies of kids to, as I said, cosmetics, for instance. There are more than 100 products, most probably, in food, cosmetics, and pharmaceuticals, vaccines, for instance, that they are having derivatives of pigs or pork in that sense. So all that would be what is called haram, what is forbidden. In the halal sector, we also have that you cannot have blood, for instance. You cannot eat blood. Here in Spain, for instance, you would have to really forget quite relevant products that are very common in Spanish gastronomy or in Western gastronomy. Insects, for instance, are also haram. And it's not the insect only, but as I said, there are some colors that are used in, for instance, bakery that come from different insects. So also the colors that you might be using for certain products in gastronomy also might be haram. Of course, it has to do with meat. As I said, apart from pork, you also have to really be killing the animal in a very Islamic way, which is that it should be facing Mecca, that the person who is slaughtering it should be Muslim, it should be doing it in a certain way and pronouncing certain sentences that really makes that meat halal. So meat that hasn't been killed or sacrificed in that Muslim ritual are, although they are not pork, they are not halal. Also, it goes for other types of meat that you cannot eat. For instance, all sort of birds that are having their nails or other sort of products. So it's much more than just non-alcohol. I forgot to say about the alcohol, non-alcohol and no pork.
And your services, not only do you provide training, but do you also provide halal food as a catering event?
In fact, Barcelona is becoming a city where people feel comfortable, as I said. And what we are seeing so far, for instance, is that, there's a growing industry here, a growing tourism sector, which is people is coming to have their wedding here. So wedding planners from UK, from France, from India are increasingly organizing the weddings here in Barcelona. And I've been involved in some cases where the population that is going to come, or the people that is going to come for those weddings, are basically Muslim. So what they are asking to people that might be serving here catering or other services is to please be respectful with the halal in their catering, food, and so on. So we have had French weddings, UK, British weddings, Indian weddings in which are taking place in Barcelona increasingly, and they are demanding this sort of product, for instance. Also, we are trying to promote the internationalization of the companies here through adaptation to the halal and the Muslim tastes. Let me tell you one thing, and I think it's very important to have in mind, and I'm sure they are aware. Halal is an option. There are 1.8 billion Muslim population in the whole world. Only in London, not UK, only in London, more than 1 million population is Muslim. Or only in Paris, more than 1.5 million population is Muslim. And these people are coming quite often also to Barcelona or in general to Spain to the tourism. Some of them might ask for halal food, halal beverage, and many others might not like it, and they're just okay with whatever food they might be served. So halal is an option. And also, it's important to know that the degree of the consume that you do in halal is also a very personal option. You might not, for instance, and I've seen it many times, you might not want to eat pig, for instance, or you might be asking for halal meat, but at the end of the day, you might have it with a wine or with a beer. So it's not something that is as strict as people might think, which is black or white, halal or non-halal, haram. So it's a much more, I would say, complex and a matter of respect, as I was saying again.
I think it's wonderful that you offer halal services which attract destination weddings for Muslim communities. That's great. I hadn't even thought of that.
It's booming here in Barcelona.
I can imagine. Do you find that there are any health benefits? Do non-Muslims also show interest in having halal food at events?
It's increasing. In fact, in mature Muslim consumer markets, especially in Europe, for instance, there's a growing tendency in which they are demanding what is called bio-halal. What does bio-halal mean? It's not enough that you kill the cow or you kill whatever animal in the Muslim way, respectful with Muslim beliefs, and then that meat is already halal. But it's not only about that. It's also about the way you have been treating that animal, you have been feeding that animal. So increasingly, as I said before, halal is spreading its values towards other sectors. So it's not anymore the meat itself once it's killed or once you eat it, is going until the very birth of the animal, and then how it is treated, what it has been eating, where it has been grown up, respectful, without vaccines, without hormones, working free in the forest. That is also becoming part of the halal spirit, which is called tayyib, which is more called wholesome, which is called healthy. And in that sense, what we are seeing is in mature markets an evolution of the concept of halal from the very slaughtery part of it toward the whole life of, in that case, the animal. So yes, in that sense, more and more non-Muslim population are increasingly asking for bio-halal meat, for instance. We are seeing it in England, we are seeing it in France, we are seeing it in Belgium, and we are increasingly seeing it in Barcelona. So people that is more in the bio, eco, and environmentally friendly, aware consumers are increasingly also asking for halal, seeing that that halal certification increasingly could mean a warranty, another added warranty of the sort of product they might be eating.
You know, Javier, I can offer some additional evidence. We have an article that was just published on our website by a woman in Italy called Luisa Pupo, and she's talking about special diets in food tourism. And she covers the range. So she looks at gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, halal, kosher, all of that. And she noticed that this is becoming an increasing trend. And when the food tourism industry was new, 18, 20 years ago, the concept of gluten-free, vegan, kosher, halal applied to food tourism, I think, was still way too new. But now people are much more knowledgeable about food. We talk about food all the time. We look to experience food when we travel, and it's only logical that people are now taking their own preferences and behaviors on the road. You know, you shouldn't stop having to be a vegetarian just because you're on holiday. and the evidence that you're saying that people are increasingly asking about halal, I think it is testimony to the fact that we are becoming an increasingly multicultural and aware world. And it's good for us to be knowledgeable about other people and other cultures.
Definitely. You would be absolutely surprised the enormous amount of companies, big companies, but also SMEs, small and medium enterprises, that are really developing their own products to be able to cope with that halal demand. For instance, the company in the world that sells more halal products is Nestlé. And by the way, it's not a very, I would say, Muslim company by definition. But you've also got in the United States the Halal Guys, which is really expanding globally through franchises. And there are many, many. Even Nescafe is doing their own coffee, Nespresso and so on, halal and kosher, to be sold around the world. You will be absolutely surprised the enormous type of products, big companies and small companies, that are doing their way by adapting their product to the halal. And let me tell you one thing, and I think this is very important to understand why halal is also growing. There are many countries in the world, from China to sub-Saharan Africa, in which food safety is really an issue. They can eat poisoned milk for kids. They can have no guarantee of the traceability of the product, and it can be poisoned, definitely in these kind of countries. While if they have a good guarantee halal certification from a serious certificator, then they can eat that product without being afraid of being poisoned or being spoiled. And this is something that is making their way in sub-Saharan Africa. You see in Nigeria, in Senegal, in South Africa, and in many other countries, that halal is growing, and not necessarily because there's more Muslim population, but because it's becoming an equivalent of warranty of healthy food in a very essential sense. Like in China, it's also growing a lot, and not because they are Muslim. There are Muslims, but the growth is beyond the Muslim population because it's a sort of guarantee that that product won't be poisoned by the ways of production in China.
That's fantastic. So let's look at the future then. You were obviously a visionary to have thought about this, and that you're doing this business now in Barcelona, and things seem to be expanding. Where do you see things in 10 or 15 years? And also, part of that question is, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind in the industry once you retire?
From a very personal level, what I'm doing by establishing my own company, Barcelona Halal Services, is two things. And I'm not talking about a professional level, but a very personal level. As I said, I have two kids, 15 and 11. And one thing is saying what you have to do. Another thing is seeing what others are doing. Is do what I say, not what I do. But in my case, after 20 years, what I've shown, I didn't do for that, but what I've done is I have decided that I want to do something, that I have find something that I would like to try to develop, my own personal project. Although I'm having two kids and then some huge responsibilities in terms of earnings, I have tried to promote and try to develop and try to implement my own project. So this is something that my kids are seeing. That is something in which I believe beyond getting a salary is I go for it. That's why I was saying that if you really want something, go for it. But in that case, seeing is believing. It's not what I'm telling them to do, but I'm not courage enough to do. They are seeing it every day at home, that I'm talking about halal, that I'm talking about, many other things. So I have left myself, I have left a serious job, responsibilities and so on, and I have established by myself, starting from zero. And that's something that I really want to think that is a sort of non-tangible legacy that I'm transferring to my kids, that once you see something you want to do, go for it. That's one issue. And the issue that I'm talking permanently about halal, kosher, multiculturalism, diversity, and so on, again, is something that is become a usual suspect in our dinners, a usual suspect in our family conversations. So they have absolutely integrated diversity. And that's the best vaccine they can have against populism and racism.
Looking back, Javier, is there something you wished you had done differently, or something you're so glad that you did right?
I think that it has been an issue that has evolved. It wasn't a day in which I say, Eureka, I have the turning point today. No, it has been an evolution. I have needed my 20 years traveling around, meeting with people, seeing businessmen, understanding realities. I have needed those 20-something years to end up in today's situation. I couldn't have done a shorter trip. I couldn't have done this project 10 years ago because I needed myself to understand, to know. I wasn't aware of all that cosmopolitanism. So I think that every single step I've been doing was necessary for the next one. And regarding the legacy, more professional legacy that I would like to be able to live here or see is that, yes, I have been a piece of a puzzle that has helped Barcelona as an institution, as a city, but also as a society, Barcelonians that have helped to normalize diversity. And in that case, normalize Muslim diversity, which is something that in today's world context is really needed, desperately needed.
Would you say that Barcelona is a leader in how cities are evolving? We look in tourism at trends, and one of the biggest trends that we see right now is over-tourism, this idea that there are too many tourists in popular places. And Barcelona is one of those cities that we look at a lot because of that. So on one hand, what you're doing is very unique and innovative and looking towards the future. And then at the other hand, we're seeing Barcelona as a city that's still suffering from one of these problems that there's too many tourists. So would you say that Barcelona is leading in trying to develop a new kind of city? Or where is it really in the realm of how cities are evolving towards the future?
I think that Barcelona is one of these cities that has become a very mature tourist destination. In that sense, it's pioneer. And then being pioneer means that you will have to do your own decisions and lead the way. The reflection that we are seeing between institutions, economic stakeholders, the society, the tourist organizations themselves is quite intense. There are daily debates, there are daily graffitis in the city, you can see them. And then these issues are making Barcelona rethink about the model. It has been a very successful model. Barcelona itself is a brand, is a well-known brand, but it is in a moment of redefinition. For instance, I'm also giving classes in one of the most relevant universities of tourism and gastronomy here in Barcelona with 50 years of experience, and they are themselves seeing a change in the mood of the students themselves. They are getting less students than in previous editions because people themselves, the students, are themselves seeing tourists as eventually non-professional of future because they might be saying that there's enough tourism or that it might be stacked in the future. So in that sense, training, education itself is already seeing that the perception of the society, so the students that might have applied there, is getting less and less every year for the last 3 to 4 years. So that's a symptom in which society is reanalyzing, and they should do really a debate, a type of, I don't know, commission is a name that is too used, but a meeting place in which all the stakeholders involved should rethink about it. But Barcelona cannot afford to lose tourism. It's a very interesting, quite unique, and very open city. So talent will be coming. Students from abroad will be coming. The weather is good. The gastronomy is good. The cultural and historical background is good. So Barcelona can't afford just finding alternative to tourism. The thing that they will have to do most probably is do a more rational approach to tourism. We cannot be happy of having new records of tourism, of cruises or whatsoever every year. There is a limit there. We cannot be happy in saying, okay, this year we have had more tourists than the year before, and that was a record from the year before unique, and there is a limit on that. Barcelona is not a big city. In fact, it's not a big city compared with Paris, with London, with, I don't know, name it. But in that sense, we have to find a new balance. We haven't found it yet, and it's something that you don't find quickly. It's an evolution of the system, but we will manage. Barcelona, I think, has good leaders and decision makers in a broad sense, not only the municipality itself, but the ecosystem of tourism is complex, contradictory, heterogeneous, and that thing, but experienced. So all these things will lead to a development of a new model.
One of the solutions to over-tourism is always to get people out of the main areas. So in Barcelona, for example, get people off of Las Ramblas, get them out of La Boqueria, get them into the neighborhoods, get them into the suburbs or the surrounding communities. But maybe the question is not so much the quantity of tourists, but maybe it's the quality of tourists. And I don't mean rich tourists. I mean tourists who come for specific high-quality reasons, like art aficionados. They come to Barcelona to experience the art of Dali and so on, or food aficionados, or sports aficionados, or whatever.
So
So rather,
let me tell you another thing which Barcelona is really pushing hard, which is music festivals. Music festivals is bringing hundreds of thousands of people from all around Europe in Barcelona. We've got more than 3 festivals, music festivals, that are having something like 150,000 people each. And many of them are coming from Europe. So Barcelona, and that's a cultural side of it, Barcelona is trying to push towards this sort of tourism because it's, as you were saying, a sort of qualitative. They know why they are coming here, what they are looking for, and they're not going to spoil it going out at night because next day they want to see a concert, a museum, or whatever.
Javier, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you personally. May I know what your favorite book is, or the book that you're currently reading is?
I'm just now reading a book called Sapiens that is talking about all the history of humankind from the very beginning until, well, just recently. It's a quite thick book, but it's very interesting, sometimes too interesting in the sense that it's really difficult to follow, and you really need, once you have read maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 pages, you really need to close the book and then try to understand really what, deep sense what you have read, but it brings quite innovative ideas and very interesting. That's from a book perspective. When I was 23, I was living for some long time in Istanbul by myself. A very unique city. I'm talking about Barcelona as a unique city, but Istanbul has its own Wales in that direction. And I was really, really, really surprised. I wasn't conscious, but smells of food from the street, from the Bosphorus, fish that was cooked in the ships, smells of drinks, special drinks they've got, raka or saleb, which is a special sticky meal they've got. All those tastes and smells, they really surprised me because they were a lot in the street, not only in restaurants where you could enter or in organized places, but it was just a smell in the streets. I wasn't conscious of that because as I was living there, it was part of my daily life. But with time, I've seen, even 20 years later, I still have some smells that bring me back to Istanbul, and it has to do with food, and it has to do with fish, and it has to do with certain issues that still, more than 20 years after that, they still bring me back to that experience. And I think that I have revalued that experience in Istanbul, personal, cultural, and gastronomic level. With time, I have been able to really revisit that experience. I've been in Istanbul more than 30 times after that, and I really love it. It has an impact on me, the smell of food everywhere there.
Is there a particular food that you have recreated at home?
My wife loves cooking. She's a very good cook. So every time we go somewhere, a country, a city that is different from ours, what we do is we buy a local book of gastronomy, and then she makes it here. But there is one thing we have tried a couple of times that I really love, which is something called manteu. Manteu is a sort of pasta that is cooked with a sort of milk cream. I served in a very concrete way, and it's all white, like you need to eat it with a spoon, and I love it. And it's why one of my dearest gastronomy remembers or from Istanbul.
Oh, wonderful. My favorite memory, food memory from Istanbul is when I had warm baklava with fresh cream. I've had baklava before, but not like you, and it was just incredible. Oh, I will never forget how that melted in my mouth.
Indeed. I mean, it's quite amazing. But one of the things that I think that it really makes sense for that interview and for other things is that food should be eaten in the right place. If the same manteu I'm mentioning you with garlic and so on, I make it here at home, it doesn't have the same taste. Although I might cook it in a correct way, but it has to be in Istanbul. Otherwise, it's not the same manteu.
Do you know why that is, Javier?
Why?
Well, this happens to a lot of tourists where you go somewhere, you have an amazing meal, and you come home and you try to make it yourself, or the same with a bottle of wine you had somewhere and you bring it home and it doesn't taste the same. It's because you are not in the same environment. You're not having that experience at home. So when you're on holiday or when you're in Istanbul, you're with friends, you're with family, there's the different smells, the different air, the different temperature, the different humidity, the different pollen. Everything about that is different, the ambient light. And you come home and you're taken out of that context. So it's like you're trying to have something that doesn't belong. You're having that Turkish food at home and it doesn't belong because you're not in Turkey. And that's the best reason or the best endorsement for tourism. You can't replicate those things at home. You have to be in the place to get the real thing.
Absolutely. As you were saying, you take the Raka bottle from there because it brings you memories and so on. You have it in the fridge and you might have it in the fridge for months because you never find a good excuse to drink it. You had the good excuse to drink it when you were there, not when you were here. Absolutely.
Javier, while we're on the topic of food, do you have a favorite dish?
I love onion soup.
Is it French onion soup or is this a
French
different
onion soup.
type?
Yes, it's French onion soup. And it's something that I know is not very complicated. Well, it has its own art, but I love it. I love it. It brings me memories, but at the same time, tasteful. And I love cold winters. So it brings me, as you were saying, an atmosphere for when you're having it.
Do you make it at home?
Yes, my wife. I'm not good at cooking, I have to admit. I'm good at being in the other side of the table.
Does she put melted cheese on top?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Otherwise, it's not the right.
Doesn't
Come
taste
on,
right.
Eric.
No.
Well, I just have
I
to
don't
make
cook.
sure.
I don't cook, but I'm a good observer.
Javier, do you have a quote that you really love?
Yeah, it's something that I am really a deep believer of. That although I'm happy of my situation and I'm doing the steps I want to do, I think that best is still to come. So this sentence of the best is still to come, which doesn't mean that what I'm having now is not good, but I'm an optimistic. So best is always still to come.
That's a wonderful way to live.
Javier, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself, maybe when you were 20 years old, what advice would you give yourself then?
That's a very good question. First, I would be surprised of meeting me again. Absolutely. I would try to advise me or that person to go for what you want, really. As I said, economy, society is getting so complicated, so diverse. There's going to be room for everybody if you are good at what you want to do. I've been trying to do so. I've been trying to really go for jobs or go for places or go for people that I really want to go, not because I'm told or because I've been pushed, but really go for it. Go for what you really want. But as I said before, this is not in contradiction of where I want to be, but I have knitted all the pieces and steps and processes that I have lived. So if you want something, go for it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you break everything and you change dramatically what you're doing. It's not the case. I am where I want to be now, right now, but without the previous 20 years, I wouldn't be able to be where I am now.
It's funny, when you get older, you know so many more things, and then you wish you could give your younger self the benefit of your knowledge today, but unfortunately, that's not how it works, thanks to the law of time.
And you wouldn't have the knowledge today if you already had it then.
Definitely.
You wouldn't make those same mistakes to learn from.
Yeah, but think about how much better and more efficient we could be as human beings now if we started with a head start,
Like that movie that you are born being old, so you've got all the knowledge, so you can really be, and once time passes, you're getting younger, no? So when you start your life, you've got all the knowledge, so you can then, at the very beginning, transmit knowledge and do things with all the experience that you're supposed to have. And then when you're getting younger until you die, which is absolutely the other way around.
I don't think I saw that movie.
Yes. It's a strange case of, and is the name of a and it's Brad Pitt, the main character. So
Yeah, I
the
remember
strange
that one.
case of, I don't know the name of the person. The strange case of that.
Was Ben something?
Yeah.
Javier,
Yeah.
what is your plan for the future now? Do you plan to open halal services in different cities, or do you want to dig deeper into what you already have in Barcelona?
I'm really fond of Barcelona, and as Barcelona Halal Services, I think that my contribution, my home, my I don't know, my expertise, but also my joy, my fun is here in this city. This doesn't mean that I can reach agreement with other people, that I can travel around, but Barcelona Halal Services is here to stay, to become play more roles in the city, diversify our services, eventually get more people and grow here to train more people. But Barcelona Halal Services, I see it here. And because I think that Barcelona can become, as I said, a symbol, and I would like to be helpful in that symbolism.
Javier, I'd like to start to wrap things up a little bit, and I'd like to bring us back to the concept of multiculturalism that we started with. And for me, really, a lot of what you're doing boils down to gastrodiplomacy, and that is one of the goals of our association. We have a Food Tourism 2025 initiative, and one of our goals is to use food and beverage to nurture gastrodiplomacy. And really, what we mean by that is cross-cultural understanding. I've been in situations where, in my mind right now, I remember a trip to Korea, and I've been across the table from people, and I didn't speak Korean, they didn't speak English, but we were able to communicate, and we communicated by the looks on our faces, and they would share with me their favorite dish, and they could see whether I liked it, and I smiled or didn't smile, and we were able to communicate. And I think that really food and drink are tools that all people share, regardless of their religions, regardless of their gender, regardless of their age, regardless of anything. And it's something that we all share. And I think if we could all come together and appreciate each other through our food and drink, I think the world would understand each other a lot better than currently is the situation.
I really think that both gastronomy and music are two universal languages. You can be a lawyer, but all your knowledge is useless if you go to China. The floors there are absolutely different. Or you can be a doctor, and if you go somewhere, but you don't have all the medicines or all the instruments that you were trained to use, you are not useless, but you can't really fulfill all your expertise. But with gastronomy and with music, these two arts, wherever you go, you can really fulfill your expertise, you can really share, you can really create together, as you very well said, without knowing even the language. An onion is an onion, and you will always smile, you will always try to create, your smells will open eyes, will open smiles. It's unique, it's universal. So I am a deep believer of gastrodiplomacy. And as I said before, gastrodiplomacy at a broad sense, see what Thailand has been doing to promote Thailand culture, Thailand products, Thailand vision, perception of what Thailand is, or Peru is doing, or Lebanese gastronomy is doing, but also gastrodiplomacy at a very local level between different cultures. Here in Barcelona, between Jewish, Sikhs, Hindus, Muslim, Halal, Muslim, non-Halal, all of them around a table is feasible. So through gastronomy, I think that gastronomy, I would use this sentence that I was mentioning before, gastronomy building bridges at a global scale, building bridges at a local scale. That's really one venue of joy, of cooperation, of pleasure at the end of the day.
Well, is there anything else, Javier, that you'd like to leave our listeners with before we wrap up for today?
No, I think that's what I wanted to say. The only thing is what I would like to, you were saying before, where would you like to see yourself or Barcelona Halal Services Project in 10 years? As I said, here in Barcelona, much bigger than what we are now, but then being able to look these 10 years backwards and saying, well, you were a pioneer, you were a visionary when you were there, but now, luckily, fortunately, and unfortunately, this has normalized. You were a visionary, but now you are part of the ecosystem. You are not a visionary anymore in the sense that diversity is part of daily life. It's the usual suspect.
Words to live by. Thank you very much for your time, Javier. It was a fascinating discussion, and I look forward to seeing you in Barcelona one day.
Thank you, Javier.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks to you.
That's all for this episode of Eat Well, Travel Better, the business of food travel, produced by the World Food Travel Association. Join us next time where we learn from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. We'll meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, eat well and travel better.